For early access plus exclusive content, facilitated discussions, live one-on-one Q&As, and more, become a patron at patreon.com/BrucePointset. Welcome back to the Church of Can't Stop, Won't Stop. I'm your host, Bruce Pointset, and this is the series where we take Can't Stop, Won't Stop, History of the Hip Hop Generation by Jeff Chang, and use it as a jump off point to tell the story of both Portland and Oregon hip hop with a special guest. And today I got a real legend with me in the building, Mr. Vursatyl. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good, Bruce, man. How you doing, bro?
Good, good. Sorry to have you. Today we're talking about a chapter with Cool Herc, but it'd be remiss if I didn't say, this is kind of this book is kind of how do I put this? It was like family for you, because by Jeff Chang, one of the co-founders of Soul Sides, then Quantum Records. Could you just start off by talking about how you got connected with Quantum, and do you have any stories from first meeting Jeff?
Well, how I got connected with Quantum, in short, I'll give you the short version, was ultimately Chief XL of Black Alicious, lyrics born of Latyrix, original Soul Side members, and they were here in Portland, specifically record shopping and, digging for old vinyl, rare vinyl. And they were at a record store called Jump Records over on Prescott. And while they were in there, Lifesavers had released a cassette single in 1997 called Grand Larceny, with a flip side, Cream Team 2000, produced by the Wolverine. Cream Team was produced by the Wolverine, aka Dub Flex, and Grand Larceny produced by Jumbo. And the record store owner played the cassette single in the store while they were digging. They inquired about who it was, specifically Chief XL. And man, from that point, it kind of began our journey on meeting each other. They wanted to meet us. Chief XL wanted to know about Lifesavers. And we subsequently met in Eugene, Oregon, after one of the Black Alicious and Latyrix shows. And it just kind of started a friendship, a musical relationship that garnered me going on the road with Black Alicious about a year later. I joined the Black Alicious live show on my first European tour in like '99. And so I met Jeff, not much longer after that. And we're all family. I just saw Jeff, unfortunately, a couple of months ago. Rest in peace to the Gift of Gab, but the Gift of Gab memorial service for family and friends. And but Jeff and I, remained cool, man, throughout these years. He's family. That's my brother.
Yeah. R.I.P. Gift of Gab. That was a tough one. I'd imagine, especially through all it's just like you said, family. It's kind of interesting you talk about first meeting in Eugene. Like, I went to school at U of O, and like one of the jokes was always that they called it like UC Eugene, because it's just like all these people from California were there. But one of the things I noticed, at least with like Portland and sort of like that Bay Area specifically, is like it feels like there's just, at least through my time of like consciousness of the music, there's always been kind of like this special relationship. On one hand, like you have, like Cool Nuts and Bosco working with like E40, Mr. Fab, but then also, you're talking about like Quantum, literally. Like, I'm not sure, is that like I said, I know at least from like my consciousness, that's been a thing. Like, does that like kind of like been the case for, I don't know, since before that, or is that kind of like something that kind of like sprung out sort of in that late 90s?
Yeah, I feel like, That's a tough question in the sense that I'm remiss if I don't say this, that out of the relationship between Chief XL and I and Lyrics Born, that hearing, they signed Lifesavers. The group Lifesavers got signed to Quantum during that time, so I need to make sure I say that. But yeah, speaking of Lifesavers, so Jumbo in that, making that Bay Area correlation. Basically, the Bay Area, Portland was one of their immediate markets to come and promote independent music. So Too Short, it just made sense, right? Like being from Oakland, if you're trying to get out and sell music out your trunk independently, Oregon is right next door. So coming from Oakland to Los Angeles, which is a huge market for the Bay Area, that's about a 6-hour drive. Coming to Oregon, a much smaller market, but easier to, infiltrate, is about a 7-8 hour drive. So it just made sense for the Bay Area to come up to Oregon, and then, the whole Northwest come up to Seattle to sell their early records. So Jumbo actually bought a Too Short 12-inch from Too Short when he was independently just hustling out the back of his trunk. And so that was kind of a thing, Too Short came up here to sell his records, like literally just independently putting them in the shops and whatnot. And so obviously E40 and that whole movement, did the same thing. So this was a market, I won't say easy, but logical for them to come try to grow what they were doing up here. So I think that relationship organically kind of started because it was a smart place to come and let people know what you were doing and try to grow it. And it, obviously that success story lives on, but Quantum was no different. That coming up here to try to promote and, be visible just made sense, and having good music, there you go. It just kind of caught and, people welcomed it. So our relationship between the Bay Area geographically just makes sense. And then, no credit, not to discredit them, like they had great music and, the Northwest took to it, but they also really kind of became a model for how to do independent music. So, just being able to see them do it, I think was inspiring, that, hey, those guys are doing it. We could physically see them coming up here with trunks full of music, going to One Stop and House of Sound and, these various record stores, Second Avenue and so forth, putting their music in. It's like, man, they can do that. We can too. So it acted as inspiration, I think, for all of us to see, to see them making dreams happen and make music happen, make it real to us that we could do it. So, there's many facets to that relationship, but, and also easier for us to forge relationships with our neighbors, given, the proximity of where they live. So for Cool Nuts and E40, for us and Quantum, it just made sense, that it happened that way.
Right. And, I was watching an interview with Jeff Chang and Davey D, I think it was on Sway, where he said something that reminded me of the thing I heard, I think probably, I want to say from you when we're doing, was it the Spirit and Stone 10th anniversary interview? He was talking about how, how like even in, whether it was the Bay or really any region, like, there's something like, yeah, the story kind of like when we talk about the hip hop story, we talk about New York and sort of like that, early 70s, but like, I remember you saying, yeah, but that was also happening in Portland. And, it was happening in all these different places, which kind of brings me to the chapter we're talking about today, which is making a name, how DJ Kool Herc lost his accent and started hip hop. But just to kind of like get to that point of, like the early days of hip hop in Portland, can you just talk about kind of like, what the scene was like, and like, were there, like, who were the early like torch bearers? Like, who was the, Kool Herc of Portland? Where are the, I guess like, what was the 1520 Sedgwick Avenue of Portland?
Man, so I think for me, I remember, it was house parties happening. And so first, let's give credit to JW Friday, Soup and Spaz on cable radio, uh, the Berry Brothers on radio, George Fitz, and many other kind of Black DJs playing music on cable. From that funk soul era, that was like, the foundation. Groups like Pleasure and Kool again, kind of branching out from Jefferson High School, Northeast Portland. They were funk bands that were kind of paving the way, not kind of, they were very much paving the way musically. But you have to say, on a hip hop level, there was Vitamix, one of the first, if not the first, independent records, then moved on to be a major label release, was by Vitamix from Portland in the mid to late 80s. Soon after was most notably the U Crew. Big up to the U Crew, Hakeem and J Mac, Larry Bell, DLB, DJ Cookie, Kevin Morris. They made up the U Crew. And so they were like for me, they were like our Run DMC, they were more sonically close to the Boogie Boys to me, respect due to the Boogie Boys. But they were really dope, really entertaining. And yeah, the U Crew early on, man, going to go see the U Crew or catching them at, the various shows. And hip hop is a strange thing because there was hip hop, hip hop was hip hop before it had a name. And the early hip hop records weren't even hip hop records. They were funk and soul records, There wasn't rapping on them. They weren't even called hip hop, but we were breakdancing and stuff like that to records that weren't hip hop, but they were very much kind of assimilated into the culture. So at that time, it was really kind of shaping and molding itself. But you had a lot of crews at that time. There was a couple of schools, and a lot of these brothers, I'm not going to be able to call their name immediately, but you have the U Crew early on, who was the Untouchable Crew. And these are two of my favorite crews, a few of my favorite crews. You had Freak Control. Freak Control had a MCD and MCT. And forgive me, sister, if I messed this up, but I think it's Pink or Pink Lady, Lady Pink. Female MC at the time, Freak Control, they were really dope. To me, one of the greatest MCs of all time was from that group. His name was MCT, Robert Mitchell, respect due. He's still living in Portland, really dope. He blew my mind. He was like, I don't know, it's just he really kind of shaped and molded what I thought I could do here, MCT. From Freak Control, you had Mos Def, and Doc Rock was the MC in Mos Def, and many other groups I could name. But the B-boy scene was a big part of how hip hop caught hold for us. It's like first it was people like JW Friday, Electro Wiz, big up to Electro Wiz, Skeeter, also known as DJ Giant. These were like early DJs that, the B-boys and the DJs really kind of set the precedent, similar to Kool Herc, but this was happening all simultaneously. So I think most notably, we say DJ Larry Bell. He was a central part musically from the Untouchable Crew. If you wanted to record, you had to go to Larry Bell's house, DLB's house, or you had to go to Bosco's house, or you might be lucky enough to know Doc Rock. They had four-track recorders. So yeah, Larry Bell was a major deal. To know Larry Bell would have changed your trajectory at the time. So those are just a few of the names, but it's all kind of converging and happening at the same time, man. But yeah, those were like those are the big names. Big up Ursus. Yeah, a lot of those cats, but the early B-boy scenes and DJ scene, that was the foundation. And I could run through the B-boys as well, but yeah, that dance scene and DJ scene was huge for us.
Yeah, I'm curious with you, did you get was your first entry in as like an MC, or did you or were you trying to be a b-boy, a DJ?
I was okay. So in terms of like visibly in the hip hop scene, I was cutting my teeth more as like a popper locker. Again, this is like early days when it really hadn't formed yet, you know, but the dance portion of it had kind of evolved out of, there used to be a group called the P.O. Pop Lockers in the 70s, you know, this is pre-hip hop. And my brother was actually in that dance group, the P.O. Pop Lockers. And so I would see him dancing or whatever. So for me, in terms of like actually being able to dance or participate in front of people, when the b-boy culture kind of started and branched out here in Portland, there used to be a skating rink called the Imperial Skating Rink, and they would have popping contests there. And Portland, we got a document. I mean, we have to at some point, we need to show this. I'm not saying on this program, but it needs to be documented that we had some of the dopest poppers in the world in Portland, you know, and you could see them at the Imperial Skating Rink. There would be popping contests, Bobbles, Clarky, Emmett, Herbert, Tick and Ken, Darren. Like, we had some of the dopest, Marcus Washington, James Britton, Woofus. We had some of the dopest poppers in the world, and you could see them at the Imperial Skating Rink. There would be popping contests. And so I really wanted to be a part of that. And that's where I first really started getting involved in the scene was, my man, Herc. We had a little group, and we got into some of the early dance and popping shows and what evolved into being b-boy shows. People like Eddie Hudson, Lil Danny, they had a group called the Robotics. It was a lot of like b-boy crews at the time. Big up to Sean Ski, Prentice, Paulie Paul. These are early dancers and hip hop participants. But yeah, that dance, I started off dancing, getting into like dance battles or whatever, popping and locking. But I was rapping that whole time. You know, it just took me a little time to get up the nerve and show what I could do in terms of rhyming. But I was rapping the whole time, but it evolved out of the dance culture for me.
Yeah, so speaking of that, you said you're rapping the whole time. Like, in terms of just like, I guess like how you just started, as you said, it took you a little bit of time to kind of like really like get up the nerve to like get out there, and really show it off. But like, and so like, how were you kind of like sharpening your skills early on? Like, how did you, develop your craft?
Well, I'm a pastor's kid, and my father is a musician. You know, he's self-taught, no lessons, plays the piano. And so my father was a musician, so I grew up around records, and I'm a singer. So, my first encounter with music is really singing in church. And so when my brother brought home the Rapper's Delight 12-inch in late 79, I tried to write my first rap that day. So 1979, I tried to write my first rap. I wrote my first rap, which was really just Rapper's Delight reimagined, you dig, with my name and little, hopefully little changes to the lyrics. I was just trying to get it going. But my brother had a group called the M&M Crew. He was a rapper. And again, I started rapping in church. So at church, I was rapping. I was writing my raps and saying them at church. This is 1980. So I was rapping a lot at church, but it caught so hard, Bruce. Obviously, we know this to be true, that hip hop hit so hard that everywhere you went, there was cats rapping, somebody. Well, and I shouldn't say it like that. Like everywhere you went, there was somebody rapping. There wasn't a lot of people rapping, but if you went to something where there was a lot of activity, you would catch one of those people who could rap in that environment. So I quickly, would be trying to find all of that and saying my little raps like in the parks and, at school. So I said, I was rapping in front of, you had like one of the blackest schools in Portland was Harriet Tubman, probably still is. And when I was running for class president, at Harriet Tubman. And this was unheard of at the time. You know, you would get up, your teachers, you'd have to get your speech approved by the teachers or what you wanted to say to the student body, you know, try to get elected as class president. Well, you know, I told the teacher what I wanted to say, but when I got up to say my speech, I said a rap. And so, you know, you think that that's a captive audience, you know what I mean, of 800 kids. And they went nuts because it was like they had never seen nothing like that before at school, you know, for somebody to rap. So that shot off like wildfire for me, is to say it in front of all these kids.
I'm curious, like what the teachers and staff do? Like, cause I imagine they were like, what's going on?
Yeah. And in Portland too, I always have to remind people, like, we were in Portland, you know what I mean? So a lot of the stuff, it was the teachers and the staff, they loved it, you know, because at that time it was still, like I said, it was hip hop the story was still being crafted, you know, so it was still very much a novelty, you know, so it was both funny and, you know, and interesting and all that type of stuff. And so they loved it. And like I said, it really helped, you know, get to the place where, oh man, can you say a rap? Can you say a rap? Can you say a rap? That really started early, you know, at that time. And again, that's like 1982, you know what I mean? Like, so with not many rappers in Portland, it helped for me to kind of get the courage. But it took time to, again, to kind of understand how to put together, how to be able to you couldn't just get in a studio at the time either. Studios were big and took a lot of money, or you had to know somebody. So to try to get to the place where I had something worth presenting so that I could get to a quote unquote local hip hop show, that didn't happen for me publicly until probably 89. You know, I wrapped that up. Portland still had sort of the infrastructure that hip hop had. So you can take like a DJ Cool Herc and a Coke LaRock, right? So at the time, the rite of passage was you would go with a DJ and you carry his records. And after a while, you might earn your stripes enough to get on the microphone. You know what I mean? And get on the microphone. And at that time, you know, where they were crafting is you just might be kind of shouting out, calling response to the crowd or whatever. But in Portland, you know, thinking like 87, DJ Skeeter, AKA DJ Giant, we were at him like, man, let us rap. Please let us rap. I had a group at Jefferson High School called The Crew. Easy D, Keith Beavers, also called KB, Two-Tone, Tony Melson, and Danny Melson. We had a group called The Crew, and we would be begging Skeeter to let us rap at his party. So one night at this girl's party, Skeeter let us rap. And that was how you got your stripes. You know, if a DJ would let you get on the mic and rap at a party, that was a big piece of your resume, you know, and we knew that. So, you know, that kind of evolved after that to me being able to rap at local shows, you know, let me rap at local shows. And not long after that, Lifesavers was formed out of a group called Isaiah. Big up to Wolverine, Brown Hornet, Harp, and the whole Isaiah crew. But that led to Jumbo and I, with Sly the Brown Hornet and Dub Flex, making Lifesavers, Mixmaster KD. But they were DJs, and Jumbo was a DJ, Mixmaster KD was a DJ. So you need to get with the DJ in order to kind of, you know, forge a path in terms of the type of hip hop that we did, especially. So that's really what led to that. About 89, 90, you know, I was kind of more visible. And let me include this in the story. I'm sorry for talking a lot about this, Bruce, but my brothers want me to tell this right. I was in a group called Isaiah. We were a singing group, and we really hit in 88, 89. That singing group blew up. And again, I was rapping the whole time, so you would catch me rapping. So again, being able to forge a relationship out of Isaiah with Jumbo as a DJ, him and Mixmaster KD, I was able to kind of push that into the hip hop world in terms of just being visible. I was able to kind of like Lifesavers were able to kind of, use that to get some weight in the city. And that really kind of took off for us as well. Just standing on the shoulders of Isaiah really helped us kind of gain notoriety in Portland.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like, were there a lot of, you said like there weren't just a lot of people rapping sort of in the beginning period. So as far as like people who were able to like combine both rapping and singing, like I'm guessing you had to, were probably one of very few, if not,
very few. Like it was and I'm trying to think. There was a cat named Ursus here from Portland. He was a beatbox primarily, in my recollection. Ursus was more, he was a beatbox. And he used to do this routine. And Ursus, if you ever see this, man, I hope I'm telling this right. I was a little boy, but I believe it was like Dolly My Baby. He used to do this routine where he would kind of cover this song called Dolly My Baby or Hello Dolly, something like that. And so he would do sort of sing songs similar to like, if you listen to like Slick Rick with Lottie Dottie, when Slick Rick goes into the "It's all because of you, I'm feeling sad and blue." But that was the way that was used. Big up to the Cold Crush crew. Most times cats would kind of do routines where they might involve R&B songs or, old pop songs into their raps, but to be like an actual singer, kind of, flip-flopping between rapping and singing like actively, yeah, that was unheard of, particularly in Portland, man. The name of our crew, Bruce, was Misfit. We were called the Misfits. So Isaiah, Lifesavers, the name of our crew was Misfits. And because at that time, that's just, and it's documented, man, that's just what we were. We were aliens here. We were aliens in Portland. Like, we were often like at war with, just misunderstood and really kind of like against the grain, because early on hip hop in Portland was really modeling the East Coast, because that's all hip hop really was. It's all we had to model. But once you have Too Short and you have Ice-T and then you have NWA, the West Coast began to establish like what Los Angeles and the Bay Area looked like. Now, Portland is not California. So most times people say the West Coast, they're describing a sound or a movement. They're not really describing all that encompassed California, Oregon, and Washington. There's many colors, many facets happening, because in the Bay, amongst the E40s and the Selly Cells and the Mac Malls and Mac Dre and all that up in Sacramento, you had Saphir. Down in Oakland, you had Hyro, which was Dale the Funky Homo Sapien, Casual. You did Souls of Mischief. You had a lot of that color. And even in the Bay, even in Los Angeles, you had like Divine Styler, you have Def Jeff, Def Jeff, and all these various colors. Look at Digital Underground in the Bay Area. That was all West Coast music, but typically when they describe West Coast, it's more of a gangster, narrative that they're telling. You know what I mean? But you always had these various colors. So for Oregon, we were not on. We were more similar to like, the EPMD, Eric B, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, then evolving into like that whole Das Effects, Tribe Called Quest, Wu-Tang, you know what I mean? Like that was more our style, of music. So to be doing that here in Portland was really, it was a no-no. I was like, nah, don't, you guys look funny, you know what I mean? Y'all dress funny, y'all sound funny. Yeah, we were misfits. So for me to be singing and rapping, that was like weirdo, at the time. It was like, never thought that would be a thing. So to see that so a part of hip hop now, is a big deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure you probably get asked this all the time, just like looking at the scene right now and saying, "Hey, I must have been some kind of ahead of the curve, right?"
Majorly, bro. Major. I mean, again, like there were dudes in hip hop that, that obviously came to prominence, like Micah Nine from Freestyle Fellowship, Park Bench People. But see, I didn't hear all that stuff. I hadn't heard, I was late as much as I'm like Micah Nine is one of my favorite MCs, but at that time, independent music, you had to really mine for it and dig for it. So I heard Park Bench People by Micah Nine and Freestyle Fellowship, or Freestyle Fellowship, including Mike. I heard that really late. I didn't hear that early. I heard that late. So that was just what I had been doing because I grew up singing. And most people, there's a divide in Portland. Most people, I shouldn't say most people. There's a divide in Portland. Some people know me for singing. More than they know me for rapping. There are some people who in Portland who are just now starting to go like, oh, he raps. There's a whole audience that like they never really, because hip hop wasn't their thing, so they don't even know me for being an MC. And so for the hip hop community, like there's people that are just really putting it together. They catching lifesavers late or whatever, that they don't really know that, man, you sing too? So I've always dealt with that. It's crazy because I get it from both sides. Like, oh man, you know what you should do? You should really rap more. You know what I mean? Or as people like, man, you should sing more. I get it on both sides depending on what people like. But yeah, it was there in hip hop, but it was really scarce to see it. You really had to choose a lane because, how do you market somebody that's doing both? So even for me, choosing Lifesavers, I did have to kind of put more of the focus on rhyming, even though Jumbo and Shines and everybody, Wolf and Sly, they always knew I could sing and wanted me to sing, but in terms of defining it and branding, I had to focus more on rhyming.
Yeah. So, title of the chapter is Making a Name. And the focus is on Kool Herc. I'm curious, you talk about like, being exposed, like getting, rappers delighting, writing your first rap that day. Yeah. But like, as far as like awareness of people like Herc, was that like a thing at that time, or was that something that also kind of like came later?
No, man. So the first I heard of Kool Herc for me was in the movie Beach Street. And man, they could have made a movie out of going to go see the movie Beach Street. Like it was eventful. You know what I mean? Like the movie theater was packed. There was breaking all down the aisles, popping. Cats had their boxes, or what people call boom boxes down. Cats had their boxes, whatever you want to call them. Portable stereos, man, banging them at the Broadway theater. I remember like it was yesterday. It was a party. You could barely hear the movie come on, because cats were so excited, and, doing what we do at the Broadway theater when Beach Street dropped. So the first time I saw Kool Herc was in Herc. The name Kool Herc was in Beach Street. But at that time, everything, once you saw it, it became iconic immediately. So I'm sure there was probably somebody in Portland that took the name Kool Herc just because the movie was so iconic. We didn't know the extent of his legend or the extent of like the role he played, but in Portland, as a dancer at the time, you're thinking Beach Street drops. Within 2 weeks, a block from me, these two brothers, Mark and Lavelle, remodeled their garage, painted it with graffiti, put turntables in there, speakers, linoleum, microphone, and that became a paying underage club called the Burning Spear. And if you know anything about Beach Street, Kool Herc's club was called the Burning Spear. So I lived a block from one of the first hip hop clubs, underage clubs, in Portland called the Burning Spear. 4 blocks from that, this cat named Ezel and his brother George, they started a garage, makeshift garage, underage hip hop club called the Roxy. And those were the kind of 2, main spots in Beach Street, Burning Spear and Roxy. And so Kool Herc became legend like that for us. Like, he was like the gatekeeper in that movie, and we believed everything we saw on that screen, for them to tell us that Ramo really wasn't the dude doing those drawings. And, we had to find out more about the truth of the culture later. But people like Kool Herc, man, immediately was an icon.
Yeah, you talk about sort of like the screen making, you see it on the screen and it instantly becomes, it's part of the culture. It's like legend. It's iconic. Like I feel like that kind of really kind of connects with that theme as far as like making a name in Portland, just because it feels like, there's been, different moments, but I just want to focus on the screen particularly. Like you talked about U Crew earlier, like that was the first, like they're the first Portland group, at least like in that era, as far as on like it's on BET, right? I want to say.
Yeah.
Like so that was like a big thing. I mean, obviously, I remember, I was in, junior high when I saw, Lifesavers, like basically like the soundtrack on, Playmakers on ESPN. And I know that was, I was a kid in Lake Oswego, but that was a big deal for me,
Major, bro. Yeah, I mean, the U Crew toured with Public Enemy. They did like late night talk show. They were like guests on Pat Sajak from Wheel of Fortune had a talk show like, to the Tonight Show, like Jimmy Fallon or, anything like that, like Arsenio Hall. The host of Wheel of Fortune, Pat Sajak, he had a nighttime talk show, a late night talk show. And I remember tuning in because the U Crew was, Portland group was going to be on, network television, man, at 11 o'clock at night, as the guest on the Pat Sajak show, like they were a huge deal, man. Like they did that, bro. Like them cats are, the U Crews, man, they're legends, and I'm proud to say, man, as a side note, I don't know if you're going to keep this in or edit it, you can do what you want, but I'm proud to say that, like, I have shown love and loved on U Crew in every way I can, man. Pause, like, throughout my career, man. When I see them personally, I give them respect and love, bro. In my interviews, all of that, man. I'm never remiss to say the U Crew are legends. I saw them for myself. I'm a fan. I want them to get their due always, because those dudes, not only did they do it, this is not some sort of slight to them, you know what I mean? Like, not only are they the quote unquote OGs, they were dope, The Untouchables, that was like the stage that I saw them, that I really, like, I became a fan. The Untouchable crew, if you could have seen that, I wish the world could have seen the Untouchable crew. Like, they were dope. They were innovative. They had dope rhymes, dope live show. They knew what it was early. So yeah, to see them kind of go from the Untouchable to the U Crew, and see them on the Pat Sajak show, to know that they were on tour with Public Enemy, man, like, those cats are just Portland legends, man. They're just really, really important to our scene. So yeah, it blew my mind to see them doing what they were doing, and it inspired me to see them doing what they're doing.
Absolutely. And, one of the things, just like actually, even in an interview for another episode of this series, one of the things I've noticed, like, just like even, younger MCs talk about just like coming to people like you, as far as being able to, one, just going for like guidance, but also, in like the importance of, I guess, connecting these dots and making sure, you know, when like people not just like know their history, but know, like you said, U Crew was that special. But then to kind of like even to that point, also just I guess understanding, like you said earlier, like Portland's not LA, Portland's not, Oakland. It is its own thing. And kind of like I remember I was talking with Wynn earlier, saying that she got some specific advice from you about like being able to manage, like when you come home, like you can go on like this world tour and then come back to Portland and being able to like balance those two things out. But so like Mike Cape's another one who's talking about like advice they get from you. Can you just talk about, I guess, the importance of one, making yourself so like available to like a lot of these like younger artists, and like again just like connecting those dots between the different generations?
Yeah, it's so important that we connect. It's important that that I be available in any way. Like, to be honest with you, I'd love to give what I've learned to more up and coming local MCs and artists in general. I love that. I think that sometimes I find like, there can be a disconnect. Like, I don't want it to ever be misconstrued in terms of my intention, but I really am passionate about the culture. I'm passionate about our city and how we represent the level of excellence that we show. And I'm also, I believe how much talent we've always had here. I know it. I know how much talent Portland has, and we have always had. But one of the challenges for me is that I lived right around the corner from one of the members of the group Pleasure, which, if people don't know who Pleasure is, Google them. There's a funk band from Portland named Pleasure. And in, the 70s and the 80s, I lived right around the corner from one of the members of Pleasure. And I should have gone to go talk to him. You know what I mean? Like, that's one thing that I would do differently, is I would have gone to go talk to that brother and just picked his brain and been humble enough to say whatever, to hear whatever he had to say for me, because it would have quickened my path. It would have enlightened me in ways that I had to bump my head to learn. And even though I'm glad for those bumps and everything that it took for me to learn what I needed to learn, I would have saw the picture a lot clearer had I went right around the corner, and he would have been cool with it, because I met him later just to say, hey man, what do I do? What should I do? What do you think of what I'm doing? You know what I'm saying? Could you just listen to me and give me your honest feedback, and be prepared for that love, because love is a double-edged sword. Sometimes it does come in critique. It comes in advice that, might feel, judgmental at times, but ultimately it's about you. It would have been for my good to help me sharpen my blades and help me understand what it was going to take for me to get out there and do what I needed to do earlier. I had those people right around me, who had done it. Pleasure had a major record deal. U Crew had a major record deal. And, even with like the Untouchable crew, the U Crew, as an adult, I knew what it was to pay them their respect. But as a kid, I wish I would have understood that I needed to go and say, hey man, what do you think of what I'm doing? What can I do better? What should I know? How do I do? What do I need, to facilitate this dream, rather than continuing to think that it was just a dream that I had, that I was reaching for a star, that I was wishing on a star. Like, what's the formula? You know what I mean? To be heard, to get out there. What do I need to do? because that those resources were right there, you know, and cats that had done well. They lived in my neighborhood. You know, I would see them at Safeway, and I wouldn't ask. And so yeah, I want everybody, you know, man, come ask me, you know. And if you really want to accomplish your dreams and accomplish your goals, you should always be open to what will make you better. You should always be open to like, hey man, this is what's going to make me better. You know, that's the goal, is to be as good as you can, to be as dope as you can, or at least in my mind, that's what it was. So I'm thankful to have been able to see Pleasure and the Untouchable crew, the U crew, do what they did, because it inspired me. But I encourage everybody, if you have a resource that you can go talk to that can give you some game, give you some insight, you know, and hopefully, you know, give you some jewels to make you better and to help the journey, you know, to help you on your journey, take them, you know, use them for what you can. And I'm definitely, I'm open to do that. You know, you mentioned Win. I have to say, Win, her approach to me, to sit down and build, was very unique, and it was effective. You know, we were able to sit down, and I feel like she was really open to just receive what I had to say. You know, me and Mike, we chop it up when we see each other, and I love their spirit. And I just like people that are just open to, you know, to build, open to, you know, to what I have to say as an elder statesman, as somebody who's been around. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, man. There's nothing wrong with us playing our positions. You know what I'm saying? At one point, I was a young MC. You know what I mean? I wasn't always where I'm at in terms of this journey. So it's important to have that, you know, back and forth and that dialogue so that we can be better.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, talk about Mike, talk about Win, you know, in this, I was curious how you see, you know, this moment. Again, we kind of come back to that theme of making a name. Mm-hmm. And like, as far as, I guess, it's always interesting to talk about as far as like the respect I feel like Portland gets, you know, outside of Oregon, really. Like, I'm curious as far as your assessment of this moment. You know, obviously, someone like Amine, which again, talking about, you know, people combining rhymes and vocals, and, you know, again. But yeah, as far as like how you see, it's just feels so general. Ask like just your assessment of the scene, but you know, I can't think of better people to ask, honestly. So
yeah,
I don't know, how are you feeling about it right now?
Are you talking about our local scene?
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love it, man. I think that we got a lot of color. I mean that figuratively and literally in the scene, and stylistically, you know, is mostly my reference. Like, I like to see the different layers of what's happening musically. Musically as colors, like I like to see the variance in the artists. I like to see people be different from each other. And I see that happening more and more in Portland, that people have their own way of expressing, you know, the art form and the music, you know, as MCs. I think that's really dope. I think one of the dope thing about the scene, you mentioned Amine, is that there's such an independent spirit in the world over right now, because we have so much of a capability to independently spread our voice, you know, through our own phones, just as having our phones, our own home studios and so on and so forth. Like, our journey is so much in our hands independently that I think it's cool as a whole, watching people be able to control their own narrative and establish their own voice. And Portland is really doing that. Big up, you know, to Vinny Dwayne. I know that he's like he has a kind of dual city, but that's been a thing. Portland has always kind of had transplants that have been a part of the scene here. But Mike Capes, you know, Rashid Jamal, and Win, and so many others. My new artist, Linda Bernard, again, I kind of think it really brings another color to the palette here in the city, you know, that young energy. But just a different perspective, a different take on it. But I also like seeing the passion. I like seeing that cats are trying to be the best, as well as like, on the beat end, the beat side of things. Big up to Dre Slaps and Trox. Trox is one of my favorites, if not my favorite cat out there. So, it's just a lot of young energy. The cats are really pushing the culture forward and making great music, like really, really making music that competes on a national level. But like for Amine, I just wanted to touch on Amine for a second, that I watched the Amine journey unravel early with his first single. And what I think is interesting about Amine is that he was independent on an independent with an independent spirit, kind of times 10, in the sense that it didn't take, he reminded me that the importance of a good song, or a song that speaks to people, a song that resonates, or a song that's, just kind of breaks through on its own merit, that oftentimes we put so much emphasis on people coming to our shows or sharing our post or whatever it is. And we can easily be discouraged in, our local support. We can be discouraged at the lack of local support. But I think Amine, what was really cool about his journey is that he just made a song, and not to just isolate him to that song, but, as a moment in his career, that initial song spoke on its own. And I think it did the work on its own. The video and the song did the work. It laid the foundation. And there was a lesson in that we need to make great music and not be discouraged, or even, discouraged or motivated or anything like that solely on what's happening for us locally, but the world is our playground. And so that was really powerful for Amine, is that without really kind of trudging the road on a local scene to the degree that a lot of us did, it doesn't take anything away, obviously, from what he's accomplished, because he reminded us that the world is our stage, and that Portland needs to make music with the world in mind and not be limited to what's happening locally. And he made it, I don't want to say in spite of, but regardless to what was happening for him locally, that song spoke to the world. And that's powerful, and that's a reminder that we can do that. Let's make great music and give it to the world. Use your platform to put it out into the world. A song that's really great, I feel like, has even better chance to get received if the music is really great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate you. Lifesavers are going into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. So again, congratulations. Could you just talk about, let me speak for Jumbo Rapshans, but you just talk about what that means to you, just on this journey.
Man, right now, Bruce, first of all, it means everything, man. It's huge. It's a major, major accomplishment and a major honor to be to be inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. It speaks volumes to what we've been allowed to do and what we've been fortunate enough to do in our career. It's important to be recognized like that in music and for your craft. I'm really focused on legacy right now, and making sure that the narrative, the story that gets told about Portland as a whole gets told correctly. And I think what's powerful about the Oregon Music Hall of Fame inducting Lifesavers is that it helps to solidify the real story of who Lifesavers are in the history of Portland music. Because what will happen, not just the Lifesavers, but I see this in music and particularly in hip hop, is that as time moves on, we often misrepresent the true story of what happened historically. And so things like that recognition in the Oregon Music Hall of Fame, or, you know, for other artists, if it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or honors to that degree, where it's a select few that are being honored, it helps to solidify what actually happened. I don't want anything that didn't happen for Lifesavers to be presented. I want the truth, and not just about Lifesavers, but for Portland as a whole. I want the truth about our scene to be told, because we've been here. Portland has been on the map, making great music for as long as great music has been being made. You know, so it's important for us to document that, you know, not just for Lifesavers, but for everything that has happened, particularly in Black music. We're fortunate to be in this position that we can be used to remind people, when they look into the annals of Portland history, what Black music has been doing in Portland from the jump, you know. So it's just cool to be a part of that story. The U Crew, once again, were inducted. They were the only other hip hop group inducted, and they were the first hip hop group inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. So what an honor, what a privilege to stand next to the brothers that inspired me and inspired us. But for us to be the only two hip hop groups amongst several genres that are inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame, that even makes it more special, because it says that it resonated to someone and someone saw it, you know. But I want to tell this, that there were, you know, one of the things that may not ever get told is that Lifesavers being inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame was a fight for those that were trying to make it happen. We're not a part of that conversation. We're not in that committee, you know, or a part of the organization that that votes and that makes these decisions. But to find and understand that there are people so passionate about Lifesavers that they really wanted to see us being given the honor of being inducted into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame, it makes you feel good. It makes it all feel worth it, that we were able to do what we've done and now be recognized on this level to represent all of the up and coming artists, and hopefully set a bar to say, man, keep doing what you're doing. Don't just do it for the moment, because this is also a testament of time that we started. You know, I started rapping in 1979. It's 2021. So we talk about, you know, an achievement. One of the biggest achievements is that I'm yet writing, performing, and releasing music all of these years later. What is that, 32 years later? You know, 42 years later? My math is
Yeah, so 42, yeah.
42 years later, you know, I'm writing, performing. That is the accomplishment, you know what I mean? And that's what I'd like to give and use as an inspiration to everybody, is that this Hall of Fame induction is about time. You know, I wouldn't want to be inducted into the Hall of Fame 5 years after I started rapping, or 10 years after I started rapping. You know, I would want a 42-year journey. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want a 42-year career, you know, and still going? Who wouldn't want that? So I think hopefully it's food to say, keep going, you know, to everybody, any genre of music, keep going. Like, make it your aspiration to do this for a lifetime, you know, and see where that leads you, see where that takes you creatively, the highs and lows of it. Don't be discouraged. Don't give up just because you're not getting an accolade or you're not getting a pat on the back, but keep going. So it's really cool to be getting it at this point, and also encouraging that we did something right, you know what I mean? And that somebody saw it. But more importantly, that for Black people and for Black music, it's documented that we were here from Portland, and the world knew about Portland, and we were a part of that story.
Yeah, that's a perfect place to wrap it. Vursatyl, thank you again for taking the time, sharing all the stories, giving me a bunch of other breadcrumbs to follow, honestly.
Indeed. No, I appreciate you, Bruce. And you mentioned like the Lifesavers 10th year anniversary. I believe it was Spirit and Stone at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we did the interview with you then, right?
Right.
And so again, as it relates to time, man, keep going, Bruce. You know, you're still here, you're still doing it. It's important, man, that you are playing the position and you're in the role that you're in. And I appreciate you doing what you're doing. Keep it up, keep exposing the scene, and giving the world information about what we got going here, man. I appreciate you for doing it, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.